first treat together was October of 1988 at Mars Hill College. And you know, in his youth minister days, as you already have learned, that the kids sat on the floor more than Johnson's wax did. I also remember one particular youth trip. He had this kid that always wanted to be riding in the front of the bus. So he had our driver tie him to the front bumper. I told you I was going to tell him that. You know, I always wondered, and you know, everybody knows Eddie has a warm heart. So, I mean, I called his mom. I said, you know, how come Eddie has such a warm heart? And she said, actually, it was in his early years that I actually caught him sniffing sterno. Feeding the 5,000. We'll get biblical here. Okay, so I'm here roasting Eddie, and I'm thinking, okay, if I roasted Eddie, that wouldn't feed two small children. Just not one. Now, as for drinking alcohol, I'm sorry, Eddie, but I saw Eddie drunk once. You know, he got a hold of some hard cider. And he got so messed up that he went out and bought 10 apple trees and planted them in his front yard. True story. As for smoking, and this also was verified with his mother, as a teen, he took and threw a smoke bomb in an orthopedic floor at a hospital, and then sat back and laughed while the patients with plaster tried to get out of there. Smoking. Heavy smoking. Oh, did I mention anything about Eddie being skinny? You know, I can remember early years, it was really unfortunate. We had a retreat, and you know, we hadn't been there an hour, and 4 kids got cut by his elbow. Not scared. Oh, here's another card. Hold on. Okay. Sorry we missed this gathering, but we would like you to consider being the centerfold for our next month's edition. Oh, that's National Geographic. Okay, so for years I've tried to find out that sound that he makes when he gets emotional, and I'm convinced he swallows a clothespin. I mean, I just think that's the way it is. Conclusively, Eddie was all the youth ministers that I ever knew rolled all up into one. I cannot imagine raising my 2 sons without Eddie Morgan. He may not be the best he ever was, but he is as good once as he is. Don't worry, Eddie. And for a personal joke, I mean, has anybody ever told you, Eddie, that if you shaved that gray beard off, that you would probably look 20 years younger? A million times. Well, bottom line, you're probably the best friend I've ever had in my life. I love you, Eddie Morgan.
Thanks, old guys. Appreciate that. We're really doing a good job right there. Gil always makes fun of me. He said, when you were 1 year old, I changed your diaper, and it was the messiest diaper I ever changed. Well, if we keep going like this, I'm going to be changing his really soon. I just turned 30, so this is what 30 looks like. Okay? Sorry. All right, a roast. I'm sure, I suppose we're all used to talking about roasting in the Baptist tradition, you know, like hell. Sorry. Okay. Except today is the day that Eddie gets to feel the flames of our scorn. I've got about 5 minutes worth of flames and scorn. My brother Kurt helped me writing here, so if this sucks, you know who to blame. Just send him an email. Speaking of emails, my dad sent me an email this morning and said, Said, Will, don't forget to tell at least one story about how Eddie made a difference in your life. Balance the humor with some thanks. Oh, and dress nice. Okay, thanks. I'll give that a shot, Dad. Let's see. I can't say that one now. Can't say that one. Oh, okay. Here's one. Okay, seriously. Every once in a while, someone comes around who's really able to make a difference in a young life. Someone who can take that raw emotion and energy of being a teenager and turn it into something positive. Someone who can mold a kid, like me, and turn him into something better than he ever thought he could be. And that person is Clark Sorrells. Clark, stand up. Where are you, Clark? Thanks, Clark. We're not here to talk about Clark. We're here to talk about Eddie and his 50 years of service at First Baptist. As we all know, Eddie worked himself up from custodian, and someone realized he was pretty good at reining in adolescent children, so he became youth director. Didn't even need a background check, so that was good. When I think of Edward, I think of Sunday night, koinonia, and in the youth department, which incidentally has now been replaced by some kind of bathroom or lobby or something. I don't. Thanks for destroying my memories, First Baptist. Thanks for all the renovations you did. Okay. Koinonia was kind of like a combination of a church sermon and a company retreat with breakout sessions and team building exercises and a bit of motivational speaking. In fact, I always assumed that koinonia was just a word that Eddie made up to give some exotic flair to sitting on the floor listening to Eddie talk. But there was so much more to Eddie's youth ministry than sitting on the floor of the youth department listening to Eddie. We also went on some really fun and meaningful retreats to Camp Owanata and Caswell Beach and found fun new places to sit on the floor and listen to Eddie talk. Eddie always believed in service, Bud was talking about there. So we'd go to Kentucky and build houses and sit on concrete and listen to Eddie talk. So that was great too. But seriously, y'all. Eddie's youth ministry was a big source of spirituality in my life. I've taken Eddie's message with me everywhere, and I go and I wear it with pride. And by that I mean I still have this PKX sweatshirt, and I do wear it sometimes, but I have still no idea what it means. Party Kid Extreme or something. I don't know. Little known fact, I also, as the years went on, took premarital counseling from Eddie a couple years ago. Helpful? Sure. Still married. Although it was kind of weird. Every time we'd come in, I'd have to answer all of these brother questions. How's your brother? What does Kurt think about your relationship? When is Kurt getting married? So yes, Eddie, me and Kurt are still happily brothered. Eddie Morgan has some real gifts. He showed me as a teen that spirituality and service are not incompatible with fun. He showed me that it's okay to embrace your emotions instead of hiding them, and that it's important to affirm your friends and tell them that you love them. I owe Eddie in large part for the best friends and close relationships I still have, years after getting off the floor and listening to Eddie talk. You crying, bro? You crying? So I have some old goodies that I found here in an old box under the bed. Let's see, affirmations from a youth trip. How's it going, Matt? Let's see here. Will, hey, how are you? Good luck in life. Have fun. Aaron D. Will, thanks for the money. I'll try to get Marshall to come to youth group. Bonnie. Will, you were an awesome person. It's cool to play pirates with you. Sincerely, Spencer Black. Let's see here. Will, I am so proud of you and all you are accomplishing. Stay strong and humble and enjoy the day. Mom. And finally, Will, hey sexy, I'm glad you sleep in my bunk. Mark Morgan. In closing, as I have grown into adulthood, there has been one thing about Eddie that I have tried to emulate. His beard. You all right? Okay, love you.
You're not looking at me, okay, so. All I can say is, thank God that at Polaris, we don't have to sit on the floor anymore. And there's too many of us that are pregnant, we wouldn't be able to get off the floor now. So, I do want to clarify with everybody that I am generally not used to speaking in front of rooms of large people, except to folks over 65 about their medicines. So right now, you are all gray-haired over 65, and I'm talking about a medication called Eddie. For those of you who don't know me, I came to this church. I told you you should have a pregnant woman up here doing it. I came 10 years ago and I was Christy Hughes, and I knew 4 people: the Toweries and the Kaisers. Not long after that, I met Eddie. And obviously, my life has changed a great deal. Eddie and I generally talk at least once a week, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on what's going on in Polaris or in life in general. We talk about church some. We talk about medicines a good deal. We talk about life a lot. I trade free pharmacy advice for free counseling services, and since I'm soon going to be dealing with 3 Dresback men in February, you can see where that comes in handy for me. As I stand here, I can't help but make note of the irony that they asked one extroverted introvert to stand up in a room of people and roast another extroverted introvert or Eddie, but after today, it sounds like you do like to stand up in front and talk to people, even though he says generally doesn't. One thing, because the least favorite thing of mine is talking in front of people, except about medicines, and I think Eddie would generally, before today, I would have said that was his favorite thing either. 2, because I have a tendency to cry, which I've already shown that, like somebody else, and again, you're taking your chances with somebody being prayers up here, so I guess after all, it is kind of fitting for me to stand up here. As I thought about things to reflect and roast Eddie on, the first thing that came to my mind is how persuasive he can be, and I think everybody in this room can say that to be true. It's really hard to say no to Eddie when he asks you to do something, even though that was one of the first things that you taught me when I came to Asheville to do balanced life stuff, is to say no. But it's hard to say no to Eddie. It wasn't a month that I had started coming to First Baptist that Eddie, whom I hardly knew, said he needed me to talk to somebody else about pharmacy related. And before I knew it, I was on a plane to Honduras on a medical mission trip. Not with Eddie, but with a bunch of other people from First Baptist that I had no clue who they were, because I'd only lived in Asheville for a short time. My mother, needless to say, had some questionable thoughts about this church and this Eddie pastor I kept talking about, because I was going to Honduras without knowing anybody. And I didn't know it at the time, but this missions experience would be an ongoing thing. I've been to the Ukraine. We've been on trips to Wary, Tennessee, to Albany, Georgia. It's been a lot of local programs that have really helped a lot of people. Our relatively small class, Polaris, which we are growing in more ways than one, we evolved from the young career singles. Obviously, that's not true about us anymore. We always seem to get nominated for a lot of different projects. If you need a house built, Eddie has Polaris there doing it. I remember saying, "Here, Christy, take this nail gun, climb up on that roof. They'll show you what to do." Okay, but of course that could be Aaron telling me to do that too, so it's not just Eddie. Do you need an event set up? Eddie has Polaris there, right? Here, guys, we need about 100 balloons blown up, put around the church. We also need you at the inflatables. If you can make sure the kids don't fall out, that'd be great. If you could stick around, we appreciate it. Do you want to go on a hike? Sure, we can hike from the base of Mount Mitchell all the way up to the top without any problem. I think all of us at Polaris have looked at each other one time or another and asked, how in the world did we get roped into this? And then we think, oh yeah, Eddie. And where do you think Eddie is usually with all of this going on? If you look around and all of a sudden there's a camera in your face, you can bet that Eddie is behind it. And usually you're just looking your lovely self, sweaty, paint streaked, caulked, covered, fun times. The other thing, of course, that comes to my mind, which I've already shown, and Eddie and several others, which I'm glad not just been me, is the tearfulness. As an easy crier, it's not easy being Eddie's Sunday school class, or in an addiction, as we saw today, or in a blessing, or well, you get the point. If there's one wonderful thing you can count on, is when Eddie talks, counsels, or preaches, there will be crying, or at least composing of oneself. Sometimes he doesn't even have to talk. He can just tear up. One of the reasons why I try not to look at him too much. One of the long-running bets that Aaron and I have is when we attend weddings is how long it's going to take before Eddie cries. At our own wedding, just walking down the aisle, he's tearing up. All right, my dad's crying, Eddie's crying, Aaron's laughing, and I'm having It's really easy. I think the average we decided on is about 1 to 2 minutes into his homily before the tears start to flow. And I'm sure that any of us who have been married by Eddie have seen this tender side and in turn cried yourself, or at least teared up. I know my Aaron, who is not the easiest of criers, has done that himself. Eddie, you've been a lot. Really, why don't y'all ask me to do this? He's been a lot to me during this journey at First Baptist. Though it's only been 10 years, it's probably been like 30 sometimes, right? From pastor to stand-in dad to matchmaker to counselor to an adopted papa for our sons. In his own words, old and tired. He still gives and gives of himself and to others to make us do things we would never think of doing. Cry more than we ever thought we would. Climb mountains and ladders we would never have ever thought about climbing up. And tackling things to pursue the kingdom of God at present. What would we be without Eddie? A lot less emotional, a lot less photographed, a lot more rested on our weekends off, but we would be missing so much.
I had my Post-it notes that Eddie used to make us write on. I thought that was one to use. Just a note, I was finishing high school the year you started here.
Jenny was being born.
Jenny wasn't here yet. I came here in 1991. My first trip was Awanata in that year. I helped in this youth group for almost 70% of Eddie's youth career. I really still don't know why. I'm just having random thoughts here, so if I go off on a tangent, you'll know why. Eddie married my wife and I 20 years and 4 months ago this year at this church. Can't think of anybody better that I would want us to be married by than Eddie Morgan. I've been on a lot of trips with Eddie, and I've been on a lot of trips that Eddie asked me to do, and then he didn't show up to. Eddie knows how to work the adults, the group leaders. We'd go on trips, and my wife Tina would always have this one kid at Caswell every year. Eddie purposely did that, I know. When you work with Eddie, you learn how to worship in a great way. Eddie makes worship fun, but you're learning at the same time. He can take a kid to Kentucky and change their life. I saw so many kids here that didn't even want to get their hands dirty when we left and went there. And on our last day, they wanted to stay past everybody else being there and getting their hands dirty. What do you do? I have a riddle. What do you do when you take a youth minister and an accountant to lead 100 people, 100 kids on a youth trip? Yes, it was a mess. But after that, it was some wonderful years of going to Kentucky. And I'll never forget the friendships that I've made through the years with the people, a lot of people in this room because of that, and because of Eddie Morgan. Late nights after everyone was supposed to be in bed on these trips, that's when you see the real Eddie come out. Of course, that was his time of day at 12 o'clock at night. And he always had a drive for helping youth to know exactly what they needed to make them turn into an adult. He always knew what they could be. It was amazing to see and watch him do that with them. As God said this morning, Eddie was the Rachel that talked about in worship. Many of his youth were Kyles in their own ways, but Eddie was the Rachel for them, and all of us adults also. Thank you, Eddie.
Well, I do still have one best, just saying. I am my father's son, so let's see if I can get through this. There was a lot of controversy. I don't know if Martha told you about it. We almost didn't have this night, a lot of politics involved. So eventually she just had to pin them down and count the layers of gray chest hair to make sure there were 30 years there. For some reason, a lot of my memories are Eddie walking through our Wanata bunkhouse in his underwear. Eddie walking down the Pippa Passes Hall in his underwear. Stealing Eddie's underwear on a scavenger hunt and putting oranges in it and running around the church. So, your underwear was a very helpful tool growing up. There's a quote that always meant a lot to me. The true measure of a man. That's face. The true measure of a man is how he treats someone that can do nothing for him. And I really think that speaks a lot about Eddie, because clearly we're talking about all the firsts he came up with throughout the years, and I think that says a lot. He always put other people first. And as much as I try to live my life like that, I'll never be able to do it as much as he did. I think we all find ourselves being selfish at times, but whenever I call home, which is not as much as I should, Him and Martha are always doing something for other people, whether it's Habitat or still working on mission projects or just going over to friends' houses and helping clean up yards. And for some reason, people call you to decorate. I'm still wondering. But we did figure out the sitting on the floor thing. He does have a flat butt, and it's pure jealousy of what everybody else is doing. I guess what he taught everybody a lot about was the importance of family, and not just the few people he has here today, but everybody in this room. Just no matter who you meet on the street, you just don't know their story, and to be nice to everyone and treat everyone like you would want to be treated. So that's all I
Well, Eddie, you're safe to go back out there.
Okay, thank you very much.
We have to. You need me to move?
No, okay, we're good.
Are we good?